Third graders, welcome to Ready, Set, Read, Research and Write. I'm Miss Gunter and I'm so glad that you're here with me today. On today's episode, we are going to do the first read of our new text in our Week 7 Distance Learning Packet. Then we're going to show our understanding of the text by answering some text-dependent questions. Let's make sure that you're ready for today's episode. You will need some materials. You are going to need your Week 7 Distance Learning Packet, a pencil, and some paper. You will have 30 seconds to make sure that you have all your materials so that you can be successful on today's episode. We're ready. We're ready. We're ready to learn. Now that you have your materials, let's get started. Today we're going to do the first read for our close read of our new text. We have talked about in the past the jobs of a reader during the first read. Let's review. There are 3 important jobs of a reader during the first read. First, they have to read with a purpose. Second, annotate the text. And third, read the text all the way through. When we annotate, we read with our pencils. We're underlining major points, circling any keywords or phrases that are confusing or unknown, using question marks to show questions that we have while reading, and stopping and jotting our thoughts and clarifying statements in the margin. Now that we have reviewed the jobs of a reader during the first read, let's look at what we're going to do specifically as we read the text today. During today's first read, our purpose for reading is to answer the question, why are electronic devices thought to confuse a bird's compass? For our annotations, we're going to circle unknown or confusing words, underline details that help us answer the question we set in our purpose, write a question mark to show questions we have while reading, and stop and jot our thoughts and clarifying ideas in the margin. And we're going to read all the way through by reading all of the paragraphs. Today, when we annotate, I really want us to focus on stopping and jotting. Readers stop and jot to help them monitor their thinking. They take the ideas from the text and then put them in their own words by jotting a quick note on the side of the text, often in the margin. Now let's look at the text that we're going to be reading. Turn to page 6 in your Distance Learning Packet. You should see a picture of a bird that looks just like this. Let's get started reading. The title of this text is Electronics May Confuse a Bird's Compass. Let's circle the word compass since that word is directly related to our purpose for reading. A compass is a tool for finding direction. The needle always points north because of Earth's natural magnetic field. Let's keep reading. Robins get disoriented when surrounded by the electromagnetic noise given off by some ordinary electronic devices. There's some words in here that I'm not sure about. Let's circle disoriented. It says robins get disoriented. Maybe disoriented means confused, since the heading said electronics may confuse a bird, and a robin is a type of bird. Let's stop and jot our prediction for the definition of disoriented. Another word or phrase we can circle in this sentence is electromagnetic noise. I know we have learned a lot about electromagnets, but I'm not sure what the author means by electromagnetic noise. Let's read to see if we can find out. If we look at the picture, we notice a little bird is just sitting in the grass. The caption says the magnetic sense of European robins, like the one shown here, may get confused by the electromagnetic radiation given off by electronic devices. There are some details in the caption that help answer the question, why are electronic devices thought to confuse a bird's compass? The caption says the magnetic sense of European robins may get confused by the electromagnetic radiation given off by electronic devices. Let's annotate those details by underlining them. We can also stop and jot since those details are directly related to our purpose for reading. We can begin reading our first paragraph. Birds know where to go when it's time to migrate. Oh, migrate is one of our vocabulary words for this week, so let's circle it. They get some of that superb sense of direction from their ability to detect Earth's magnetic field. That magnetic sense acts a bit like a compass. That word is really related to our purpose for reading, so let's circle it again. Used by human hikers. The detail, that magnetic sense acts a bit like a compass used by human hikers, is directly related to the question we're trying to answer in our purpose for reading. So let's underline that detail and then stop and jot by putting that detail in our own words. Earth's magnetic field helps birds know where to go when migrating, just like a compass helps hikers. The next sentence says, but the energy coming from some electronic devices can perturb a bird's internal compass. I'm not quite sure what perturb means. I'm going to circle it since that's a new word. And that might confuse a bird's sense of direction, according to a new study. These details help to answer why are electronic devices thought to confuse a bird's compass. Let's underline them. Readers, remember during this first read, we really want to focus on stopping and jotting when annotating. So based on the details we just underlined, what can we stop and jot? Take 1 minute to stop and jot your ideas. I know you worked really hard during that minute. What did you write for your stop and jot? I think your stop and jot sounds a lot like mine. I wrote, electronic devices may confuse birds because the energy that comes from the devices disturbs a bird's internal compass. We are already learning a lot about why electronic devices are thought to confuse a bird's internal compass. Let's keep reading. Most electronic devices send out waves of energy called electromagnetic radiation. Electromagnetic radiation is a phrase that is unfamiliar, so I'm going to circle it. Text, it says, most electronic devices send out waves of energy called electromagnetic radiation. So I know that electromagnetic radiation are waves of energy that electronic devices send out. I'm going to stop and jot this definition so that I can remember it later. Let's keep reading. The levels are too low to harm people. Any given device only sends out a small amount, but some type of this radiation could pose a problem to birds. I'm going to underline that last detail because that helps me to understand why electronic devices are thought to confuse a bird's compass. Now that you've seen me do several annotations, it's your turn to practice. Take 2 minutes to read and annotate the next 2 paragraphs. Good job, scholars. You stayed focused the entire time. So proud of you. But what annotations did you make in the last 2 paragraphs? These 2 paragraphs had so many different things that we could have annotated. For example, I circled the words fidget, biologist, and Erythicus rubecula because those were words that were unfamiliar to me. However, I was able to go back into the text and make predictions on some of the definitions. For fidget, when I went back and saw that they fidget in their cage, and the next sentence said they try to face in the direction, I made the prediction that fidget could mean to move. With biologists, the text said that Henrik Moritzen was a biologist who was looking at the birds. So biologist is someone who studies animals. And Erythicus rubecula was in parentheses next to the phrase European robins. So I knew that was another way of saying European robins. But I also had questions. In the first sentence, it said, even when held captive in a lab, birds know when it's time to migrate. That made me wonder, why were the birds being held captive? I also underlined details in the second paragraph that helps to answer the question, why are electronic devices thought to confuse a bird's compass? The details that I underlined were to a rural area with low electromagnetic noise. There, the birds had no problem figuring out which way to turn, but birds caged in the city were confused. They were likely to face in the correct direction only when they were shielded from the electromagnetic radiation. Notice that the author put the word only in italics. He really wanted to emphasize that. So my stop and jot says, the birds knew which way to turn to migrate when there was less electromagnetic noise. You were able to see how I annotated the last 2 paragraphs. It's your turn to practice. Remember, one of our jobs as a reader is to read the entire text. You will have 3 minutes to read and annotate the rest of the text. Ready, set, read. today. We read the entire text by annotating for our purpose for reading. Now that we've read the text, let's answer some text-dependent questions to demonstrate or show our understanding. Readers, remember when we answer text-dependent questions, we think about whether the question is a thick question or a thin question. We use our annotations to find where in the text there are details that can help us answer the question. We reread the text and develop our answer, and we underline the details in the text that support our answer. Readers, let's practice this four-step strategy by answering the question on page 9 of your Week 7 Distance Learning Packet. The question on page 9 asks us, why aren't humans affected in the same way? Using the four-step strategy, the first thing that we need to do is think about whether the question is a thick question or a thin question. I believe this question is a thick question because it is asking us why something happened. We are going to have to use evidence from the text and our background knowledge, or what we already know, in order to answer this question. The second step of our four-step process to answer text-dependent questions tells us we need to use our annotations to find where in the text there are details that can help us answer the question. I remember reading about details on how humans were affected on page 6. Step 3 tells us to reread the text and to develop our answer. This paragraph says most electronic devices send out waves of energy called electromagnetic radiation. The levels are too low to harm people. Any given device only sends out a small amount, but some types of this radiation could pose a problem to birds. Now that we've reread the text, let's develop our answer. When answering thick questions, readers should use information in the text and information they already know. So in the text, this paragraph told us that levels of electromagnetic radiation are too low to harm people, and devices only send out small amounts of electromagnetic radiation. I already know that birds are smaller than humans, and birds use the Earth's magnetic field for their internal compass. We can use the details in the text and what we already know to develop our answer. Humans are not affected by electromagnetic radiation or noise in the same way as birds. Most birds are much smaller than humans. Electronic devices send out small amounts of electromagnetic radiation, and the level of radiation is too low to harm people. Also, birds use the Earth's magnetic field for their internal compass. Humans do not have an internal compass. This is why humans are not affected by electromagnetic radiation in the same way as birds. The fourth step in our strategy to answer text-dependent questions tells us that we should underline the details in the text that support our answer. Readers, you can practice using this four-step strategy with the other text-dependent questions on page 8 and 9 of your Week 7 Distance Learning Packet. You worked so hard today doing our first read and answering the text-dependent questions. Until next time, I wish you and your family well. Bye.